We spend millions of hours perfecting rockets and life support systems, ensuring metal and silicon can survive the vacuum. But the human mind is biological machinery calibrated for exactly one environment. Strip away that environment, and the mind begins to fracture. In 1976, the crew of the Russian Soyuz 21 mission suddenly demanded an early return to Earth. They reported an overwhelming, acrid smell filling the Salyut 5 space station. Ground control sent a replacement crew and breathing gear to investigate a toxic fluid leak. They found nothing. NASA later reviewed the reports of severe interpersonal tension on board and reached a different conclusion. The smell was a shared hallucination. 2 years earlier, the American Skylab 4 mission faced a similar breaking point. Exhausted by the relentless workload and isolation, the crew simply snapped. They switched off their radios, cutting contact with Earth for a full day, just to stare out the window in silence. We can build rooms full of engineers to monitor thruster telemetry and oxygen levels down to the decimal, but the human nervous system isn't a machine you can patch with a software update. It evolved over millions of years to process the specific light, gravity, and social feedback of Earth. When you remove those conditions, the brain struggles to orient itself. Without the steady physical inputs it relies on, the boundary between baseline reality and the mind's own internal noise begins to dissolve. Curious, explanatory. To understand why this happens, we have to look at how our brains process input. We are wired to constantly seek out novel, interpretable information. New sights, sounds, and textures actually feed the brain's opiate reward pathways, keeping our psychological coping mechanisms active. Deep space exploration puts humans in what researchers call an ice environment, isolated, confined, and extreme. Whether it's the cramped metal sleeping quarters of submarines or spacecraft, the visual and tactile monotony is absolute. The brain is effectively starved of new input. This starvation leads to a documented psychological shift known as the third quarter phenomenon. Researchers tracking crews in ice environments notice a distinct pattern. Coping skills and emotional stability don't decline gradually, they plummet right after the mission passes the halfway mark. This chart shows composite scores of a crew during a 23-day submarine deployment. The orange bars represent self-reported coping strategies. Notice time point 4, the third quarter of the mission. The lowest point of coping behavior happens right here. Psychologists believe this occurs because the crew realizes they are only halfway done, and the exact same duration of confinement still stretches out ahead of them. When a crew hits this wall, and the sensory environment offers nothing new, the brain tries to fix the deficit itself. It compensates by generating its own stimuli. This triggers severe separation anxiety, deep depression, and vivid waking hallucinations. Sensory deprivation is only the first hazard. The second involves the loss of a framework so deeply embedded in our biology that we rarely even think about it. The 1G superprior. Earth's gravity is the most stable reference point the human nervous system uses to understand spatial reality. On Earth, the vestibular system in your inner ear and proprioceptive signals from muscles tell your brain exactly which way is down. In microgravity, that predictive framework shatters. The signals lose sync. Your inner ear detects falling, while muscles report floating. Without gravity pulling downward, body fluids begin shifting upward into the head. This cephalic fluid shift increases intracranial pressure, altering the shape and connectivity of the brain. They report feeling unmoored, detached from their own bodies, or experiencing a sensation where the boundary between themselves and the spacecraft disappears. Astronauts famously describe the overview effect, a profound spiritual sense of interconnectedness when looking down at Earth. Neurologically speaking, this phenomenon is the direct result of the brain's predictive hierarchy destabilizing, forcing the mind to loosen its perceptual borders. While microgravity warps our perception, the space environment also carries a threat that actively dismantles the brain's physical architecture. Outside the protection of Earth's magnetic field, the solar system is flooded with high LET and HCE cosmic radiation. These highly charged particles act like microscopic cannonballs tearing through neural tissue. When mice are exposed to cosmic radiation doses simulating a Mars mission, The radiation physically reduces the complexity of their brain cells, shrinking the dendrites that allow neurons to communicate. This bombardment overdrives the brain's immune system. Specialized cells called microglia become hyperactive. They trigger a severe neuroinflammatory response that actively attacks the brain's own circuitry. The mechanism behind this aggressive microglial activation mirrors the abnormal synaptic pruning we see in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. The brain essentially begins consuming its own memory pathways. High-level radiation systematically dismantles the hardware of the human mind. The resulting damage to spatial memory and executive function leaves the brain physically unable to regulate fear and anxiety. A mind starved of sensory input, inventing its own reality. A predictive framework shattered by the absence of gravity. And neural hardware actively chewed apart by cosmic radiation. Together, these three hazards form the mechanics of space psychosis. These three factors demonstrate that human biology is tethered to Earth-specific physical parameters. When we strip away our native gravity and magnetic shielding, the nervous system loses its ability to maintain a coherent perception of the world. Current mitigation strategies fall short against this environment. 2 hours of daily exercise, scheduled video calls with family, and routine cognitive tests cannot prevent highly charged particles from destroying dendrites. They cannot stop the physical rewiring of the nervous system in the deep void. This forces us to ask whether human biology is structurally incompatible with a multi-year mission to deep space. We have the engineering to send a crew to Mars, but their brains are not built to survive the trip. If we are going to conquer the cosmos, we have to accept the steep biological toll it demands. The astronauts we send into the deep void will make it back to Earth, but their minds will not be the same ones that left.